Well, hello and welcome to this Think Global Forum Roundtable. It's a pleasure to have you all with us today here live, or if you're watching to this on a recording, we appreciate you taking the time to do so. I'm joined with a fantastic panel today, and it's a real privilege to have María here from the Think Global Forum team. Of course, our speaker who's going to kick us off in a moment, Phil Ritchie. And also we're joined by Tom Doerr, no stranger to the world of AI, and Bruno Herrmann, known to many, I know, in the localization space. We're going to do a presentation from Phil Ritchie, CTO, about this wonderful landscape of AI, its impact on the localization area, and of course, the world of content. And then after Phil's finished his presentation, we're going to move to the panel and really talk through this topic a little bit more. And when we have time at the end, we'll try and squeeze in a few questions from our audience joining us live here today. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can head down to the Q&A and pop a question in at any stage, and we will try our best to answer it as we come towards the end of our time here together today. So thank you to everybody who's watching or listening to us. And let's start. Phil, maybe over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Hi, everybody. So I think I'll start with a story, and no doubt friends and family will enjoy the irony of it. You know, as a CTO, I'm in a very lucky position. I have the luxury a lot of time when I'm talking to people to tell them how technology is about to change or improve or more likely disrupt and destroy parts of their job, and encourage them to, you know, reskill, to get on board with technology and harness it to their advantage rather than try and resist it. Then just over 2 years ago, this happened. And I have to say, it caught me quite by surprise. We had been used to having, if you like, single line little prompts called IntelliSense in our development environments that would usually suggest small pieces of programming code. But this really had a dramatic kind of effect on us. And I think I dealt with it pretty well. I dusted off my CV, applied for several retraining grants, and moved on. And so, you know, over that 2 years, you know, the relentless pace of AI innovation, has just been relentless. People have been building bigger and bigger models with more and more parameters, and it's quite strange that you know, we got to the point where even the very pioneers of AI issued a petition quite recently calling for a 6-month suspension of training on large language models, you know, because they were just scared of misinformation, ethical concerns, and other concerns that they had. And it's kind of sad in a way, I suppose, that you know, Jeff Hinton here, who's one of the leading lights of AI, was starting to compare himself to Oppenheimer, which is you know, it's sad, I suppose, in a way. So, you know, I spent a lot of time musing on the nature of AI and the power of AI platforms. And, you know, way back in 1984, when the movie Terminator came out, you know, the bit that captured my imagination was the part of the storyline where they talk about a military computer system becoming self-aware, and that really kind of caught my interest and imagination. I'm not sure why they use the term self-aware versus sentient, but you know, we could lead ourselves down a very deep philosophical rabbit hole having a debate about that. Then we have the test of a computing hero of mine, Alan Turing, and he devised a test for AI that essentially had an examiner talking to another human and an AI. And it was said that if the examiner couldn't tell the difference between the AI and the other human, that the AI was said to have passed the test. And, there's a lot of people currently arguing about whether large language models pass that test currently. So, it's very interesting, the point at which we are now. Content delivery has, or a kind of a revolution in mechanized content delivery has been around for a while. The Japanese, I guess, have kind of led that market to a certain extent, particularly in the healthcare sector, where they've had robots delivering help and advice, and sometimes physical assistance for a few years now. And it's quite funny. Us technologists might think that we can control the way in which we want people to consume information, but you can be sure the general public will articulate their displeasure if they don't feel that it's the most appropriate way. And then, most recently, an Indian TV channel introduced their AI news anchor called Lisa. And the advantage of Lisa is that she speaks multiple Indian dialects in addition to English. And seemingly, audiences in India have been really welcoming this kind of interaction in terms of, picking up information, particularly in a kind of a news context. So in terms of the kind of the concrete ways in which AI can impact content creation and delivery, there's a number of ways here, and I think we've probably seen most of them already in an individual context. So we have platforms that can do content moderation, or add personalization, or look at SEO, but large language models really come very close to having an ability to take all of these things into consideration, in one go. So rather than have perhaps a multi-step process, you can really have a single request or a single task, and have all of these things built into it from day one, which is very interesting. And in a sense, we're almost kind of getting to this Minority Report kind of scenario, where the moment you walk into a shopping mall, once you're identified, you start getting very targeted information pushed at you. And that's kind of both scary and interesting at the same time, I suppose. I'll say a little bit about what we're doing in Vistatec. I think the first one here is my favorite. I've heard of a lot of companies closing down access to Gen AI because they're concerned about, quite rightly concerned about, security and privacy. But I'm proud of the fact that here we've been able to provide all of our employees with access to a secure and private instance, and we've really empowered and encouraged everybody in the office to go away, to learn, to experiment, and to really find out where they think Gen AI can help them during their day-to-day business. And it's a great way to get people on board with the technology and to upskill themselves. So that's kind of my favorite one, I think. Automated target content generation. I think this is an exciting one from a marketing perspective. We do a fair bit of content creation for customers, but generally, we author something in English, and then it's kind of adapted for the target market. I think this is very interesting from the perspective that you could go direct to target market and possibly make the content much more targeted to that destination than you would if you were authoring in a more abstract way. So I think that's really interesting. Neural network MT versus Gen AI. I think there's it's fairly well known at the moment that generative AI possibly has better fluency, but obviously because it's been trained on a much broader set of content, that its domain specificity and terminology is perhaps not as good as Gen AI. But we're doing some pilots there to figure out exactly where those differences are, and can they be can we fine-tune Gen AI, for example, with terminology as we do with neural network MT. Quality assessment and estimation. The big difference there is that the quality assessment is assessing quality with reference to a gold translation. So if we already have a translation in that target language and we get a new machine translation, for example, we're kind of assessing the quality between the gold standard and the new output. The quality estimation is much more establishing a quality assessment on its own basis. There's no reference translation there. Our tech ops people are looking at all kinds of technologies to help with text extraction and preparation for translation. So lots of things to do with particularly multimedia type assets, extraction of text, creation of subtitles, all those kinds of wonderful things. And then my team in particular is looking at integrating AI into a lot of our internal applications. So currently we have applications for resource assignment, language quality, and query management, and we're looking at folding in AI into those tools, which is very exciting. In terms of findings to date, we do intend to publish white papers on some of the pilots that we're doing, so that you can get more specifics on things. But I think in terms of general kind of feedbacks, like MT, there are variations in quality and effectiveness depending on language, content type, domain, and again, I think that's not unusual given the broadness that Gen AI is working from. But there's some interesting avenues there. And then I think the way that you frame the task to Gen AI is really, really important. I think the term prompt engineering has entered the general vernacular at this point, but the idea that you have to think carefully about the question you're asking AI is very important. And we did some very early kind of naive tests when we were first looking at this, and I have some examples here for you. So here we were simply asking ChatGPT to evaluate a translation from English into Italian, and you can see it comes back with answers that are primarily focused on the correctness of the translation and whether the original meaning has been maintained. So useful information, but quite constrained in what it's telling you. We then had a look at some plugins. So here you have kind of a third party in the middle, as it were. So we're asking exactly the same question, but in this instance, the question goes to the third party plugin provider. they have the ability to massage the question that's sent to the AI. And then also on the way back out, they have an opportunity to do something with it. And here you can see, we get a different type of answer. The system was obviously asked to classify the translation according to some buckets, if you like. So here it says, it's rated as fair. So they probably had classifications like good and perfect and poor or whatever it might be. And then we get some general feedback again on the accuracy of the translation. But then if we take the plugin out of the equation again, and this time we give perhaps a more directed question or a more accurately phrased question, and we actually ask for a linguistic critique rather than just evaluate this translation. And here you can see we get much more of a breakdown. There's it's paid attention not only to whether translations are correct and understandable, but it also talks about using alternative phrasing for formal text and considering the use of other verbs and things like that. So it's a much more conversational type of answer that you get. So, and we've been finding this throughout the pilots that we've been doing, that you really have to think carefully about how you interact with the AI. Do I use it? Absolutely, every day, for all kinds of things. It's really quite engaging. I have to tell you, if this had been around when my children were teenagers, I probably would have used it during negotiations around curfews and all kinds of things. Like, it's really interesting. I certainly don't give it personal information, and I don't take everything it says as gospel. But I think it's very interesting not only to get it to justify the answers that it's giving you, but also to have it give you answers from different perspectives as well. And I find it very useful in just all kinds of situations where you're trying to reason your way through a business problem. In terms of what's next, I have to say I'm not capable of anything close to reliable prediction myself. But there's probably two quite large areas that people are investing money into that will be fruitful. One is, I think, the larger corporations who perhaps have a little more of a skill set and a budget to match will start to fine-tune their own large language models and really produce AIs that they can use within their own business contexts, particularly for inferencing around corporate data and things that they want that are very proprietary to themselves. Excuse me. And then there are also a good few people working on frameworks for pipelining and chaining large language models with other facilities. So, for example, APIs, computation engines, knowledge bases. And, we can see that people like Google are already working on these kinds of pipelines in order to have them cope with end-to-end tasks like, book me a flight, make me a dental appointment, all those kinds of things. So I think that's certainly two areas where, we'll see things grow. But, overall, I think it's very exciting. As I say, I'm very pleased that we in particular have given all of our employees, an amount of empowerment around this to experiment with it. And it's very, very interesting. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Phil. You've certainly give us a lot of context there. We've covered everything from the Turing test to self-aware sentient terminators, where we kicked us off. But you've also touched on relentless growth, which is really interesting. Fascinated to see the Indian dialects and the sort of AI agent, if you like, that's generated there. You mentioned security and privacy. you talked a bit about the quality assessments and also the implementation of AI into Vistatec's own internal applications, and that's sort of allowing people to go off and use this and really figure out use cases as well, that empowerment. And of course, the what's next is a sort of a bit of an open-ended question. But I want to bring in, if I can at this stage, Phil, I want to bring in both maybe Bruno and Tom, and maybe Bruno, if we start with you, maybe just some of your thoughts, questions, or opinions on what we've been sort of kicking off here. So thank you, Phil, for a great start to today's proceedings. Let's bring the wider panel in.
Yes.
Yeah, and to be honest, I share the excitement of Phil regarding AI. I know in this field there are two groups of people, pessimistic and optimistic people. I belong to the second group. I'm definitely optimistic for all the reasons that Phil mentioned in his presentation. And I would say that the way I see the impact of AI on localization, but also on other areas of content management, it must be, of course, value creation, and I think that's very important. You just mentioned, Simon, empowerment. You mentioned other benefits of AI for the people, and I think that's very important. That even in a business framework, we all stay focused on the value creation, or how AI is going to increase the value for the business and for the customers eventually. And I think, usually I tend to sort of split my view into three parts, which is the people, the processes or the operations, and the technology. And I think, these three areas are going to be, and already actually, heavily impacted by AI, positively in my view, but of course, not everybody probably would agree. But if I look at the people, for instance, in the localization industry or in the language industry in general, of course, there will be big changes. There are big changes already going on in terms of project management. It's no longer based on files. Project management is going to be around, data services, content services. So more data, less files, for instance. So that's a big change for project managers. And for linguists, I know I got the question on a regular basis, why are you so excited about something that's going to kill linguists? I said, no, it's not going to kill any linguist. I think it's going to empower, it's going to enable linguists who are today probably limited to a number of tasks which are related to post-editing or to language analysis. Because of the nature of AI, which is based on data and not on files, linguists will have more tasks. They will have more opportunities to actually use and maximize their linguistic skills. Instead of just sticking to the traditional task of a linguist. So these are two examples, project management and language management, which in my opinion show that AI can and will have a positive impact on what people are and do. In terms of processes and technology, yeah, there is a big change as well. Obviously, as I said, AI has made data even more important than before. I know for years people have been saying, yeah, data is the new oil. I would say that now, today, with AI, language data is the new oil. And I think many organizations are sitting, that's what I see. I've been seeing that for quite a number of years now. Before, when I was an employee, and now when I'm a consultant, I see that a number of organizations are sitting on gold mines. I call that gold mines because they have plenty of files, sometimes millions of files, that are containing really critical information for the business. These might be customer service files. These might be product information files. And these files are in multiple languages. They are in multiple formats. They are audio, text, video, whatever. And all these assets they will have to be in some way converted into data, language data, to train and feed AI engine, machine learning. Because machine learning will not be fed with files. It will be fed with data. And that data will have to be relevant, actionable, and of course, clean. So in terms of operations, that brings some new opportunities, again, some challenges, I agree, but these are also opportunities from my perspective, just to be able to maximize and to leverage AI the way it should be, and instead of being scared of it, maximize it, use it, embrace it to actually do things better and faster. And then technology, that's another one. Well, of course, in the language industry or in the localization industry, it's obvious that technology has always plays a big role. And again, here, data, the way data services and content services, I would say, are going to be managed is going to be critical. I think that for a number of years and even decades, technology in the language services industry has been focused on the transaction of files, or as I said, some well-established tasks in the workflow in the supply chain. And now there is a brand new open space, which is really exciting from my perspective, which is that both organizations, so buyers and suppliers of content services, can really use and can really participate to the creation of this language data that's going to be so important. So that will have to be part, in my opinion, data services and content services will have to be part of the tech stack of any organization sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Bruno. And you made some excellent points there. Again, that word empowerment came up. And these sort of data gold mines, if I can use that phrase. And we've seen a lot of conversation around that at the moment, in particular that sort of content, whether it's oil or gold or whatever term you want to use. But I think companies are really realizing that they are sitting on this fantastic asset, and bringing that into multiple languages and using the power of AI to make that accessible to people. And Phil was touching on that, wasn't he, in terms of larger organizations training their own models on their own bespoke data and the importance of that and the benefits that we see to that. But let's bring Tom in, because Tom, I know you're sort of at the cross section with what you do in the world of AI in terms of marketing content. So what about what we're talking about so far? Any sort of early observations here, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly echo Phil and Bruno with their optimism around AI and its potential to have a positive impact on the world and on the way we're doing things in business. From a point of view of content, my background is marketing. I help businesses adopt AI to enhance their marketing execution and the outcomes of the work that their marketing teams do. And it's not unique to content, but being able to take some of the weight off the shoulders of some of the knowledge workers, who have to do a lot of thinking up front. In this case, if it was creating content and coming up with, if it's for the purposes of marketing, a content marketing strategy or sales enablement content, and then they go through the process to get it localized and translated further down the line. If they can know that they're able to spend more of their time up front considering cultural nuances and the impact of what they're trying to achieve through content in different regions, in different languages, in different segments of their audience, and then they can leverage AI and their workflows that they've integrated AI to create that content, and do more of the legwork, then it frees them up to be more creative, be more impactful, and through that, at scale, like Bruno said, doing things better and faster. In the world of marketing, the key is to test and evolve and test and optimize. So the more you can do, the more you can learn about the effectiveness of what you're doing, and then how you can do better. So when it comes to content, being able to spend more of your time thinking strategically up front, getting some of the work automated or enabled or augmented with the help of AI, and then executed at a faster rate, at a higher scale, to then get more data and understand the impact of that content and that work. If it's if we're thinking of content marketing, even as simple as creating blogs or email automation and marketing through email channels, if you can have more numbers to work with, you can make more strategic decisions in a quick succession and have a higher velocity of improvements to the work that you're doing. And that's not just like having more talented people on the team or having suddenly increasing your headcount on your marketing team. It's somehow applying, years of improvement that wouldn't have been possible in a short space of time without AI. And it's such a step change from the way things are done now that I don't know if many businesses are ready for that pace of improvement, or they're geared up to be. And if they're not, their competition might be. So, it poses an interesting challenge and opportunity dynamic for businesses, is how fast they can adopt AI for some of these processes to be successful, versus some of the precautions and the steps they might want to take to be able to do that, and finding that balance. But going beyond that, personalization and segmentation of marketing efforts always has a correlation with its impact. So you can do big sweeping marketing campaigns and create content at a very broad level, but where we see real impact is when that gets more and more segmented and customized and tailored to the individual. And that's not really possible for many businesses at huge scale. They might do a couple of different key buyers in their persona map, or they might change things for the US market versus some of the European markets. And but with the use of different tools within the AI technology stack, they can make things hyper personalized and hyper tailored to local markets and multiple subsegments, with any different group. And then even using other tools to tailor things to a one-to-one personalization level. Being able to couple that with spending more of their time making data-driven strategic decisions at a faster pace, it's an explosion of possibilities in terms of the impact from a marketing perspective. And I know I come back to marketing, but most of this is agnostic of marketing. It applies to many areas of a business. But yeah, and so much of this is less cost prohibitive than it has been in the past. Large scale localization and translation of content is something that isn't within the bandwidth, the budget of a lot of smaller and medium sized businesses. So the barrier to entry to different markets beyond their own local one is often that they just can't localize their efforts, not just from marketing, but they can't translate their website effectively, or they can't build PowerPoints. And I had a Zoom call with someone in Brazil the other day with a real-time translation integration that they set up. I think it was called Kudo, and we just had a conversation. And I heard him in English, and he heard me in Portuguese, I'm assuming. That's just one part of this process that wouldn't have been possible for much smaller businesses or individuals or smaller companies. And it's kind of leveling the playing field for some of these technologies to be adopted. So it's an extremely exciting time.
Thanks, Tom. And I think going back to that relentless growth that Phil was talking about, I think you made an excellent point that maybe some of the companies, whether they're small, medium, or the biggest companies on the planet, are you ready for this fast pace that this is coming down? As Phil said, there's a relentless growth here. Bruno and Phil, you both mentioned that. I think the initial reaction from some, whether it was the linguistic community or the technology community, was, okay, I better dust down the CV. This is going to replace everybody. And then we sort of come full circle on that argument. Now we're into, look at the superpowers we have as humans. If we sort of implement this with us, it's sort of the human in the loop, that sort of human plus AI. Look at all this heavy lifting we can move. And Phil was talking about how Vistatec is implementing AI into a number of its internal applications and some of what that future roadmap looks like. But Maria, I want to bring you in because I know you've got some questions here on this topic. Maybe you can share some of those with our panel. And if you put questions into the Q&A, we do see them. You can see Charles and E.T. and a few others popping questions in. So please feel free to put your questions in, and we will come to a Q&A at the end. But Maria, just some initial observations and maybe some thoughts or questions for our panel.
Yeah, I just want to say first that Tom just hit a point that I wanted to talk about, and it's all these key essential factors that people need to consider when approaching to implement artificial intelligence into a localization process. He was talking about all these cultural nuances that we need to take into account. And it's something that obviously a localization expert knows, like a date and number formats, currency symbols, multimedia elements, I don't know, idiomatic expressions. But he is right. Artificial intelligence could help a lot. And it is amazing what a heavy lifting AI can do for us. But is there any other examples that any of you can think of how AI can improve content creation processes apart from this?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have used it to not create outlines from scratch, but I've you know, maybe put down an outline myself as things that I wanted to talk about, some ideas, you know, some small fleshing out, and then give it to the AI and say, you know, what things have I missed? Is there a better way of expressing a topic? And getting, you know, having it provide a critique as to whether it's you know, understandable or complete or whatever. So I think, yeah, there are definitely ways there that you can get it to help you. You know, because by the time you'd crafted a suitable prompt to write, you know, to write the outline for you, you'd be there for a good few days. So it's you know, the fact that you can give it something and have it provide a critique is a useful mechanism.
So is it like a reviewer of your work, so you get like a second hand or a second help, a second eye on your work?
Like an editor, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
I'd kind of...
Oh, sorry, Tom.
I kind of adding to that, you know, a lot of people don't consider that as much as you're using AI in any respect, but when it comes to generative AI, you don't have to use everything that's being generated. And when you're, if you're not using AI, if you're using, you know, staff or contractors or freelancers or you know, a vendor or supplier to create anything, it's tremendously wasteful to not use the things they're creating. And it can be frustrating to, you know, provide a brief or instructions, and then the work comes back and it's perhaps missed the mark in your mind, or wasn't quite what you had in mind, and you may be worried that you didn't give enough information or enough of a good brief to get what you wanted. Being able to use even just ChatGPT and refine your prompt engineering to understand, you know, based on what input you give it, what you get out, to learn more around how you're instructing the AI or the people that you work with, I've found incredibly useful. And I've seen teams, you know, find that really useful to just dedicate some time to refining their prompt engineering and not worrying about using the output for anything, you know, so they can kind of get their brief set and then maybe, you know, apply that at scale and try that a bunch of times with some QA steps, but they're not trying to leverage whatever's being created from step one. And I think it's been a really useful part of the process to make people recognize how responsible they are for the outcomes and the output of the, you know, the process and the work being created. It's not purely down to whoever it's being handed to. So that you know, I found that a really interesting part of the content creation process.
Bruno, were you going to add a comment there? Were you?
Yeah, I just had another example of benefit of AI for the content creation part of the supply chain. And I would say that from my perspective, AI is raising the bar of content readiness for localization and globalization purposes. So what I mean here is that if you look at the whole supply chain from creation to delivery, you have, of course, localization, translation, localization in the supply chain. But you can ask a number of people in the localization and translation areas that, you know, they will complain about the quality or the effectiveness of the source content, because they will say that, you know, it's garbage, so garbage in, garbage out. So they don't want to be blamed for a lack of effectiveness in the localized content because the source content hasn't been created properly. So what I see now is that AI is really raising the bar in terms of source content readiness for localization by actually, creating this output, which is not going to be perfect. But since the people in charge of content creation will have more time to fine-tune this source content, which might be in English or other languages, then the bar of effectiveness will be raised. And because of that, I would say there will be some sort of ripple effect in the rest of the supply chain. Because if people are able to create better content, when I say better, I mean content that is more ready for translation and localization, then of course localization teams will have also more time to fine-tune the content on their side. So there will be some sort of, as I said, virtual circle that is going to be really applicable to the whole supply chain, but that will start in content creation just because AI will generate output that's not going to be perfect, but that's going to be quick and already usable, perfectable. And then, the creators, as I call them, or the content producers, because they will have more time, they won't have any sort of excuse to say, oh, sorry, I didn't have time to make it perfect for translation purposes or localization purposes. No, it's not going to be valid anymore. And I think that's really where AI is really creating a lot of value at the creation side.
Yeah, very, very good points. Thank you for your inputs there. Maria, I hope that gives us a little bit more clarity. Is there anything else from your side, Maria? Because I'm very conscious we've got some great questions coming in from the audience as well, and I do want to bring some of those in. But Maria, what about from your side?
If we have a couple minutes, I would just like to know if they found any challenges on implementing AI in content creation or workflow processes in Tom's situation. Because I know AI is still something, let's say, new, although it's been there for a bit. So is there any challenges that you guys find that there's still a lot to work on?
Yeah, I think any process that involves humans is always going to have errors and issues and flaws. And the AI is only going to be as good as it is, and it can produce to a maximum quality or capacity. And it's up to us to be able to engineer prompts to have a QA workflow and have the necessary steps in there to deliver the outcome that we're expecting. But just in creating processes and using tools and softwares to enable that, this is all very new to a lot of teams, regardless of their profession. So stuff takes time to get used to, and people are learning on the go. And I think there's a bit of, for some people who are very eager and enthusiastic, there's a bit of a rush to be seen as the team or the individual within an organization who's the fastest to adopt AI and the champion of AI internally. And with any technology or anything really, that can pose its own risks, because they maybe overlook certain things, and they don't account for some of the errors that could be created, or really the quality of work or anything like that. And that can pose real risks if you work in certain industries, healthcare or finance, and you have content being created that isn't properly vetted or briefed or QA'd. You can get yourselves in trouble. So I think companies having people rushing into this without much guidance and empowerment, and companies lacking policy or an oversight committee or any of the steps really necessary to have meaningful adoption, it's just ripe with risks. So with that comes issues and challenges in the process of creation. But many can be unique to the business, but the risks there are fairly universal.
Thank you, Tom. Well, look, at this stage, I'm very keen that we don't run out of time, because we've got some really great questions coming in that I can put to our panel from people who have joined us here live today. And the first one I'm going to put out is to everybody. It's from Tim Arata. Tim, thanks very much indeed for your question. And Tim's question is really around Gen AI. And Tim says that Gen AI disrupts the traditional global content workflow, you know, source, localization, team, translation, lock team, stakeholder, to publishing. So content management becomes challenging. Can you, writing, you know, and content management becomes challenging. Can you see anyone or any tool that addresses this challenge? So, you know, as Gen A disrupts that sort of traditional global content workflow, basically, you know, when it comes to content management, as it becomes more and more challenging, is there any tool that you think addresses this challenge well at the moment?
Maybe I can start.
Sure.
I don't see any tool, but I do see a solution that can help with that, which is to implement what some people call the marketplace or an ecosystem that is going to be integrating Gen AI in the workflows, or the workflow if there is only one, so that this Gen AI is going to be not just used as an isolated tool, but it's going to be used as a real component of a tech stack. What I like to call that ecosystem, where, you know, somebody will be responsible for some content, can use Gen AI as a component to create content, but at the same time, he will be able to use other potential tools to refine that content, and actually to, as I said before, to no longer use content as files, but to use content as data, which is something that I see in some organizations now. When they talk about content, they don't talk about files anymore. They talk about directly native data. And I think that Gen AI can be, you know, a great component of this ecosystem. Personally, I've not seen yet, maybe there is one, I haven't seen a tool that can really, as itself, as such, can be, you know, sort of, you know, a silver bullet for, you know, for the people in charge of content creation. And the other reason why I believe ecosystems are probably, an ecosystem is probably a good solution rather than a tool, is that, in my opinion, and I'm working on a project with a client now that is hesitating between using multilingual data scientists or data-driven linguists to do the work in content creation. And it reminds me this sentence that, you know, some people said in the past, I don't need a linguist because, you know, I have members of my team who are multilingual. But is a multilingual person, you know, enough to do, you know, to create or even to you know, to test multilingual content? No, it's not because you are multilingual that you are a linguist. So I think I said to that client, I wouldn't use, you know, multilingual data scientists only. I think an ecosystem also enables the collaboration between data scientists and language experts, you know, linguists, translators, so copywriters. So I think this also brings people together more than just workflow components together.
Thanks, Bruno. In the interest of time, guys, and I know we've probably all got views on this, but I just want to put a couple of more things to the panel. And this is from Charles Tidswell. Thanks, Charles, for your question. It's about the translation or task requires multiple people. And even if the prompt is the same, and we talked about prompt engineering earlier, Phil, you were talking about refining that prompt and critiquing the answer and giving it better instructions. But even if the prompt is the same, the output could be different based on the temperature, the frequency, you know, presence type penalties. Have you therefore, or do we therefore need to realign your sort of internal processes to ensure that all these different flavors of a possible translation concludes with a single source of truth and, I suppose, accuracy, if I could maybe add to what Charles is asking there? I think it's a great question.
Yeah, I think I was thinking on Tim's question there, and you could imagine content management systems, rather than storing a piece of content, are more storing those parameters, if you like. So it stores perhaps a draft outline, but it also stores the prompt template that was used and things like these temperature parameters that were used, just so that people have an ability to to not only reproduce the content, but to tweak it as well. You know, there's no point in arriving at an optimal output and then somebody throws away the prompt, and you're thinking, well, how on earth did we generate that the last time? So that's probably quite interesting in terms of systems that will, you know, begin to manage those kinds of things, so that, and perhaps even you know, generate prompts for you. I know of at least one company that is trying to patent a system that creates prompts from a series of inputs. So it takes kind of human input and generates prompts for Gen AI. So yeah, there's certainly those aspects that are going to come into play.
Yeah, and we've played around with a few dashboards as well, and we've investigated where there are a few companies that are providing these sort of prompt dashboards, these prompt libraries, aren't there, where you can sort of put those in place for businesses. Are you seeing much of that, Tom, from your perspective?
Yeah, and so much of it is just some guy's Google Doc, you know, and they're cramming it full of stuff, but you can sign up and you can pay for these things, and you know, it's not very expensive, but it gives you access to a wealth of stuff, and somebody has already taken the steps to, you know, back to what I was saying earlier about learning, you know, how to prompt engineer and learning what content you get out of it. You know, it's skipping some of those steps for you, but there's a variety of different tools I've looked at that clients have used that have, you know, some aspects of the prompt pre-engineered, so there's some consistency, you know, and that's what companies want, and that's what a lot are looking for with these sort of enterprise solutions of things like OpenAI or ChatGPT Enterprise, to make sure that was it Charles's question, you know, there's consistency, there's a single source of truth, and you know, businesses rely on that degree of consistency, but you can't have people rewriting things from scratch every single time, because you will just get such a wide variety of outputs.
Yeah, and I think it's two sides, isn't it? It's the requests coming in and the cataloging of that, but it's also the data that's in there, right? And Phil kind of touched on that, with companies maybe training their own models, their own LLMs, and also that sort of cataloging of, this is the way that we want to bring those two engines, if you like, or inputs, if you like, together. I got another great question here, if I can. It's from E.T. Sahai, and Bruno, she's kind of aiming this at you. E.T.'s basically saying, is there any good real life examples of how AI is being used to have positive impacts and positive outcomes in the project management or the language management space?
Yes, I have seen some recently examples of the positive impact on, you know, I would say, yes, project and language management. For me, it's the content supply chain, actually, I call that. And, you know, as I said before, I'm currently working on a big project with a client that is moving from, you know, a file-based content management system to a database, language database management system. So the beginning, in the beginning, of course, you don't see well, I haven't seen myself, even the positive impact coming up very obviously, so that you could say, Yahoo, I found the best solution with AI, but it's how it is infused, it's how it is adopted. Because I think implementing AI is one thing, adopting it is another thing. It's the human side of AI, if I can put it like that. So, for instance, as I said, you know, if AI is already now leveraged to create content properly, content that is ready for localization, then the content effectiveness, which is linguistic, cultural, and functional, so these three areas have to be covered in the effectiveness of content. AI can really accelerate, it can expand, you know, raise the bar, I should say, that's the best word, raise the bar in effectiveness, because people will have more time, they will be able to maximize their skills. So language analysts will be able to really spend more time on making sure that the content is not just linguistically correct, but also culturally relevant and functionally working. And project managers will be able also to be not just as I call them, the middleman or the middlewoman of the supply chain by passing files between several people. They will be able really to leverage data services and content services rather than just typical file transaction. Yeah, that's the best word I can say. So yes, I do have an example. I cannot mention the name of that company I'm working with now, but if it is interested, she can contact me and I can tell her more about it. But I think it's not just what I see now, it's what I hear. I was in a conference last week dedicated to language technology, and most organizations, so not just Amazon and Google, but also some very interesting startups who are saying the same thing.
Yeah, thank you, Bruno. There's a comment from Charles. He says it's not really a question, but he's just raising the point that the prompt engineering can be quite binary when you look at it from one angle. But what's more interesting, he just wants to make the comment that it's really the roles required to tag the content. And as you were talking there, Bruno, I was thinking about Charles's comment when you're moving people from sort of this file library to this sort of data pool or this data lake of information, and how all this data becomes this really rich sort of resource for companies. And it maybe isn't as organized at the back end as it should be. And maybe that importance of content is important. And it brings me on to one of the last things I wanted to put to the panel. It's from Gundula. And Gundula makes the point about the readers, the people that are consuming all this content. We haven't really talked about it from the sort of end user's perspective or the person receiving all this wonderful information. Are they being bombarded? Is it too much? Shorter and shorter periods of time everybody seems to have. In addition, making the point there's trillions of posts and content out there. Is the human brain actually wired for this kind of stuff? So I suppose if I read between the lines, it's a bit about making sure that AI is helping us to not just create content for the sake of content, but create meaningful value and deliver the right value to the right audience. So does anybody in the panel want to maybe jump in on that?
I saw a very nice demo where somebody was using AI. I don't recall what the topic was, but they literally said to the AI, tell me about this topic, give me 10 high-level bullet points of no more than 50 words on critical bits, and then they were able to say, please expand bullet number 3. I'm more interested in that, and then please expand bullet number 5. So this ability to control exactly the bits you're interested in is very exciting. I think you really can. I think once you realize that you can interact with the AI rather than just have this question and answer going on, it just revolutionizes the way that you use them. And one point that I didn't make in my presentation, which I think is kind of cool, is the way that certain aspects are being democratized. So in terms of the way that you learn, because you can be sitting in a meeting, somebody's talking about something, you have no concept of what that is, and within a few seconds you can find out, and then really start to join the conversation and contribute. It's kind of cool. We haven't really spoken too much about the positive aspects of where humans can still stay in the loop here, but that people talk about human characteristics like imagination, intuition, empathy, the ability to understand innuendo, and our ability to communicate. Those are all really cool things that certainly in Vistatec we're hoping our account managers can elevate themselves and continue to use at a kind of a customer service level, and you know, just contribute at a whole different level.
Thank you, Phil. I'm going to go back around just before we run out of time here today, and I'm going to ask each of the panel members just maybe to give us any sort of additional comments that maybe they're thinking of that they haven't had an opportunity to share, because I know we've had to move at a pretty rapid pace. The good news, and Phil said that, you know, there's a couple of topics that we maybe didn't dive into as much as we could. We have another 2 of these roundtables coming up on this topic of AI. So you can all check out the thinkglobalforum.org website. The details will be there under the events tab, should you so be interested, and we hope you can join us in the future. But before we wrap up, I'm going to go back around and just give each of our panelists an opportunity maybe to add any final thoughts, anything they want to leave us with today, or maybe cover anything they feel that we need to sort of emphasize here. So maybe if I start with you, Maria, maybe can I come to you first, and then we'll maybe finish off with you, Phil, at the end.
Sure. I just want to say maybe I'm the only person whose English is not their first language. So for me, AI, it's amazing because as Phil said, for me, is a second pair of eyes. I use it a lot for, like, example, Simon said, I write in Spanish, which means, like, for example, $signs are always after numbers, or like stuff like that. I know it's small things, but for me, it is always great to have that second pair of eyes when I write something, and AI is helping me a lot. It helps me see which are my mistakes before I send the emails, so I get to perfection it, and next time I would write it better. So I do think AI is something that you have to have on your side and use it daily. It will help you be better every day.
Yeah, it's a good point. Phil was saying it's his daily go-to. You're not alone. Bruno is there with you. Don't worry. We have more than.
Oh, it's true, but his English is much better than mine. I forgot, Bruno.
I don't think so.
Maybe Tom, can we go to you next, Tom? Any sort of parting thoughts or any other things you want to touch on before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I always end up my conversations with anyone around AI, trying to encourage them to spend time becoming knowledgeable, becoming familiar with the capabilities of AI, how it can be leveraged for their daily professional life, their regular life at home. You know, and the quote I always come back to is that they should learn with haste and proceed with caution. And, you know, and the key there is proceeding. Don't be the person who is left behind, waiting to see what everyone else does. You know, a lot of people are worried about losing jobs to AI. They will if they don't bother to learn about AI. You know, if that's a concern, make sure you're the one in the team, in the organization that has experimented, has taken the time to learn, has become wise in the value that AI can bring to your role, your team, your organization, whatever that may be, beyond marketing. That's my key takeaway in any of my conversations, and I really try and push.
I like that a lot. Thank you, Tom. Bruno, over to you. Any sort of last thoughts?
Yeah, my last thoughts would be for you know, how AI is perceived today. And I think, you know, every day I can read dozens of articles about, you know, success stories or hall of shame regarding, you know, the implementation of AI. Implementing AI is very important. It's a big challenge, but adopting AI is equally important. And I think that there are less attention for the moment in general. There are less attention going to, you know, how to really, just like Tom said, how to really explain, demonstrate, and justify that AI is going to create more value. It's not going to, you know, bring more human or less human in the loop. It's going to, you know, change the humans that are in the loop by changing the tasks and changing the way they work.
Thank you, Bruno. And Phil, you have the last word from our panel today before we wrap up. Any last thoughts or sort of pieces from your side?
No, I think the one thing I hope for every day is that you know, people use these facilities for good purposes. I also look after information security in the office to an extent, and the ingenuity of hackers and people to use AI for bad purposes is just boundless. It would be lovely to see, you know, more and more stories of people using AI to, you know, to address health and quality of life and all those kinds of things. So that's where I hope the big investments are going to go.
A great point. We're big supporters of AI for good, for sure. Well, look, that brings us really nicely to the end of what is part one of a three-part series around this interesting, fascinating, and hot topic of AI. I want to personally thank everybody. I want to thank Bruno Herrmann for being here with us today, Tom Doerr, Maria Roa, and of course, Phil Ritchie. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you to everybody who has been joining us live. And of course, if you're watching this on the rerun, we certainly appreciate your time today. But thank you so much indeed. I hope you can join us on the next roundtable. Please go and visit the thinkglobalforum.org, thinkglobalforum.org, and we hope to see you again soon. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time.